Now, guys, who can tell me, Ryan, how about you? What is the SDLC? Ryan, do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, what is the SDLC?
So, it's a software development lifecycle, and it's kind of rules and objectives that you are standards and principles of managing, planning, and organizing a problem-solving task.
Okay.
Want me to say more?
Okay, Ryan, and I know you missed that class. Okay, guys, as you connect yourself, please mute yourselves, okay? All right, so Ryan, I know you missed that class, but I was hoping that you would have a chance to play back the recording. Every answer must be 3.5 minutes long, all right? So do you want to continue with what is the SDLC? What do you know about the SDLC?
You want me to say more about it?
Absolutely, you have to talk for 3.5 minutes.
All right, so yeah, the software development lifecycle. We talked about it having about 6 or 7 phases: initiation, requirement gathering, design, implementation, testing.
Ryan?
Oh yeah, sorry. Where was I? Oh yeah, the different phases like implementation, operate, and maintain. So it allows for a few different approaches. The traditional approach, pretty much basically setting up a specific plan based on the requirements of the sponsor that are needed, and kind of following that plan. But there's also an objective approach, which is basically based on focusing on the exact needs and of that problem and analyzing every requirement as it goes, not specifically focusing on a plan, but really focusing on user specific functionality and how the user will want it. Yeah, that's pretty much all I got down in my notes. Is that what we're looking for?
I think you still need to talk some more. All right, why don't you ask somebody to help you out, Ryan?
All right. So if anybody would like to help me out, I don't mind.
Should we talk about the SDLC phases? I mean, I'm a bit confused. I think he covered everything. If we don't have 3 minutes of conversation, what do we talk about?
Yes, the SDLC phases. We want to talk about SDLC phases.
Okay, so there are 6 different phases: initiation, requirement gathering, and then design, implementation, development. I believe there's testing, and then maintenance. And we could go deep into each one of them, but wouldn't that be way longer than 3.5 minutes? Or do we just inform them that there are different phases.
Nidhi, Go ahead.
I was just confused if it was like a 3.5-minute interview question. Do we go in detail about every single one of them, or do we just kind of explain what it is? Because I remember you telling us it's not saying for. I mean, it's basically it's frame or structure of developing an information system, but it's not saying for every single project. So do we just?
Nidhi, it is the concept. All the methodologies are based on this concept.
Okay.
So when I ask for the SDLC, I need you to talk to me about the concept, right?
Right.
You have to tell me that the concept itself, if you've gone through the blog, here, let me share this again. We have the 4 concepts of the SDLC. Around this is what we, our forefathers put together the 6 phases. Why do we have the 6 phases? All of this, right? I need you to weave it into a proper answer. So talk to me about the 6 phases, and then what are the different activities that you do per phase?
Okay, so this, I mean, I didn't really go through the 4 concepts of SDLC. I did see it, I didn't read it. I'm sorry about that. But I could talk about the 6 different phases if that's what you're asking for.
That would be great. If you can do that, that's fine.
Okay, so the first phase will be initiation. So if you have any kind of a project that comes in, you would want to, if that's the initiation phase, would be defining the problem, or I guess if you have a project you want to make sure that you have it's feasible, you have a technology that you could accommodate whatever your solution is you're trying to provide, you could accommodate that with the technology you have. I guess figuring out the schedule of the project and how long it might take. Then depending on, talking to your managers and stuff, you need to figure out the staffing that's going to require, and then you start your project. That will be the initiation, and then you need to go into the second phase, which will be requirement gathering, which we talked about last week on conducting meetings, building prototypes. You need to prioritize your requirements, and then you, whatever suggestions you have, you also take in consideration of what management is suggesting, what is it that they require. I'm sorry, I'm hearing a lot of Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry. Lipsy, this is the last time. If I get any more disturbance from you, I know you're trying to log in and you're having audio difficulties, but it is disrupting the class. If you continue to have problems, please call Alok. All right? But I don't want my class disturbed or any more disturbance here. All right? Please continue, Nidhi.
Okay, so the third phase will be designing phase. I guess you would sit down and talk to your design architect. You figure out the way to system interface and the prototype. I really can't go dig into the design phase because I really don't know. But I guess that's what you have to do as a VA. You sit down with your architect team and you decide which route can you go by, and I guess explain the requirements over to them. And then the fourth phase will be implementation. You would, after it's designed, you will basically test it, make sure you have all the documentation, figure out which components of the software you need. And I'm just kind of going over my notes. I can't really think all of it. and that will be the implementation phase, and then it moves into testing phase, and that will be, I remember you talking about there's a whole team that works on it. So that will be the testing phase, and there's many different kind of testings. You do unit testing, applications, and documentation testing, then user acceptance testing. So I guess that's from a user side to see how that's going to work once you deploy that software, whatever you're building. And then the last phase will be the operations and maintenance phase. So that's basically after you have deployed it, any kind of enhancements it's going to need. That's what it falls into, that operation and maintenance phase. I don't know if you want to add something to it, but this is the basic what I had.
Okay, Trishma, that would be great if you would like to. That's great.
Hello?
You can put yourself on mute. Trishma, yes, please continue.
Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
SDLC stands for Software Development Lifecycle as well as System Development Lifecycle. It's a standard or a framework. It's a conceptual model that describes the different stages involved in information system development. There are 6 stages: initiation, requirement gathering and analysis, design, implementation, testing, and operation and maintenance. The advantages of SDLC is it allows us to focus on our objectives. It allows us to focus on gathering requirements, planning, and finally to reach our goal. It allows us to focus on the trade-off. Like if we have lots of tasks and work, we have to either trade off time, cost, or the quality. It helps us to reach the milestone in every stages of the SDLC life cycle. It also helps us to describe which tools, models, or diagrams to use while developing the software. Even if we use SDLC, there is no guarantee that we will succeed in the final project. It defines us to help. It helps us to develop the scope, but it depends upon the people involved in the project, their skills, how BA has the quality to ask proper questions, how software engineer has the ability to develop the software, and how the whole team involved in the SDLC. I think that's what I can say. How much time did I say?
Actually, you were pretty close, so 2.5 minutes, but Trishma, that was very nice. The way you started off is correct, okay? Now guys, remember, when you give me an answer, it must be in a proper format, which means that it must have a beginning, a main content, and then a summary. So always wrap up your answer. If I don't know, if I can't tell whether you finished or not, then to me it's an incomplete answer. Okay? And trust me, in the interview process, we have brownie points. So, we give away brownie points. So if it is a well answered question, then you earn certain brownie points, right? Simply because of how you delivered the answer. Does that make sense? Okay. Ryan, do you know how to answer this question?
I mean, yeah, I know how to answer the question. I understood, what everybody said. But you wanted you wanted to answer a specific way. You want me to go through it again?
If you would like to, that'd be great. If you think you would rather take the next question when I have one, that's also okay. Whatever works for you.
Either or. I guess
Either
I'll wait
or.
on the next. Yeah, I guess I'll wait
Then
on
go
the
ahead.
next question. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, The SDLC, as I said before, system or software development lifecycle. It provides standards and principles of managing a system. The SDLC has 6 phases: initiation, requirement, design, initiation, requirement gathering, design, implementation, testing, and operating and maintaining it. Initiation involves defining the scope of your problem and whether it's feasible within the company. Requirement gathering means sitting down and actually understanding what functions are needed by the sponsor to solve those problems. Design involves actually sitting down with architects and designing the actual software that will solve the problem. Implementation and development means actually start implementing the solution within the company, and then while you do that, you test. Testing involves an SQA group which verifies that all the requirements are there. Also, user testing done by team members to ensure the products are acceptable. And operation and maintaining, meaning that you keep the system up to date as it's used. So basically, the SDLC is your guideline for setting up and running a solution that meets all the requirements that are set up by your sponsor. Yeah, does that answer the question?
Okay. You still have to work on it because you did not complete the allocated 3.5 minutes, okay?
All right, I can do that.
All right. So before we move on to the slide deck that I have, are there any questions on what we've learned so far? Because I know I gave you time to catch up on all the recordings and all the information that's on the blog. Any questions? None? Okay. So in that case,
teacher. Hello. Yeah, I have one question. It is about the methodology of software development life cycle, JAD. And JAD involves involving clients for the software development process, right? So, what kind of client are we to be talking about here? Like a client, like the market client, or the client from the company itself?
It can be anything, Shadab. All right. If you're building an internal application, that will be used internally, then your client are the business owners, units that will use your application. If you are building a software that is going to be used by customers like you and me, then the client in that case is the customer. If you're building an application that is going to be used by other corporations, then those corporations are your clients. Okay, Shadab?
Okay, thank you. And there is one more question. Does all the methodology of software development, like RAS and JAD, does it all require prototyping? Is prototyping required in every methodology?
Okay, so this is something that we will learn today. However, let me answer this upfront. Prototyping, when we started software development, right? Prototyping is how it all began. However, nowadays, prototyping is not necessarily considered a methodology. It is more a way of gathering requirements. Now, that being said, we always have some exceptions. How do you think Facebook was built? Do you think Mark Zuckerberg actually went through a project lifecycle or an SDLC lifecycle when he was building his Facebook, his application, his software?
No, I don't think so.
No, right? So basically what he did was he built a prototype. So prototyping is not necessarily a methodology, and yet all these, let me just put it this way, amateur developers, right, coming up with new ideas, they are building prototypes. So we can't discount it either. Does that make sense, Shadab? The same applies for
Yes, Priya.
Google, Larry Page and his friends. They did not do any, they did not follow any particular SDLC. They just started talking about what would be nice, and they started building a prototype, okay? So prototype is not necessarily a methodology. Now, same goes for rapid application development. Rapid application development is, again, not a methodology like prototyping. It is a way of getting things done faster. So when we have brainstorming sessions, right? In brainstorming, we are typically just talking about what should the software have. And then we are going into the next phase where we ask the developers to come up with a design. In rapid application development, or in even, and that's not the case. Okay, we'll learn about that in a little bit. Now, JAD sessions. This is what I've already posted on the blog. JAD session is a different kind of requirements workshop. So when you do a requirements workshop, you typically have your business units and yourself in a room. In a JAD session, you will also have the development team in a room. Okay? We're all going to be sitting together, throwing ideas, and right then and there, we will say, well, is it possible to build it? So we are analyzing our requirements and at the same time doing a design, figuring out how to build it. Now, JAD sessions are typically, we use JAD sessions when we have offshore teams involved. Okay? How is that? Well, if you think about it, the SDLC, if you're having an offshore team build a software for you, you've gone through the initiation phase, you know how much you want to spend, you figured out which offshore team you want to outsource this project to, right? So that part is done. Then you know what your requirements are. What is it that you want the offshore team to build for you? So you have a requirements document. And then ideally is when the offshore team should be involved, right? However, this offshore team does not know you, your background, the company, none of it. They are relying on your requirements document to understand what it is that you are trying to build. They will want to have some sessions with you so that they can go over the requirements document and understand your needs, and then simultaneously will put together a design. Those sessions where you are, you're doing so many things, right? Understanding the requirements and designing, they are ideally the JAD sessions. Now, many companies, what they do is, instead of having, because you'd have to go through the same requirements one more time, right? So you would have initiation requirements and then another requirements clarification with the with your vendor, right? So that's a phase 2.5 there. So what they do is sometimes they engage with a vendor who has done this in the past, right? And they typically sometimes say, well, tell us, how should we build it? What do you know from your experience? What is the best thing? So we gather requirements and put together design all in the same phase. Now what that does is joint application design is it speeds up the process, especially of a very complex system. And sometimes for stuff that you don't know how to build, right? And they'll tell you, this is what we do. They'll ask you, what is it that you want? And we are defining our requirements right then and there, and we're designing the system right then and there. All right, so it is a combination of requirements and design that's called joint application design. Does that make sense, guys? So instead of having design and development combined together, in joint application design, you have requirements and design combined together. Okay? So now we can go and talk about the other methodologies, real true methodologies, right? And we, of course, will also touch upon prototyping. So methodologies, as we mentioned before, yes, we have the SDLC, right? We have the concept, but we can't just apply the concept to one and all projects, right? Because no projects are similar. They are different industries. They're doing different things per project. So which led to various methodologies, different ways or methods of following the same SDLC, right? Hence the term methodology. Now, some methodologies were more famous than the others. How come? Well, remember, there are always IT forums. There are always some forums that apply. People in the industry, they meet together, they discuss what's happening, how did they do things, and so they discuss ideas, they exchange ideas in those forums, right? And so when the waterfall methodology was proposed, there were many followers. They thought that yes, this is really great. That was the methodology that would work for them, and they started following it, right? The same applies to other methodologies as well. So in these forums, when people exchange ideas, they exchange methodologies, they exchange, and if others feel that there is some value to the methodology that's being discussed, that if they were to apply the same, that possibly it would benefit them, then a certain methodology becomes more popular. So that being said, guys, there are hundreds and thousands of methodologies out there. Why? Because every variation is really its own methodology. However, if it is slight variation, we don't necessarily call it a different methodology, right? Why? Common example. When you download a recipe from the website and you tweak it to your taste, you substitute a couple of things here and there, do you give it a different name? Do you call that recipe something different? Yes, Rishma, each time? No, right? We pretty much call it by the standard name, right? So same goes. I mean, you may have tried one variation this time. You may try some other variation the next time. Same goes, if I were to download the same recipe, I may have my own variation of it, correct? But I'm not going to change the name of the recipe. It is still going to be the very same. So that same concept applies here for the SDLC. So we can have multiple variations of the same methodology, right? And however, when these methodologies are distinctly different, then you call it a different name. So today we will learn about the methodologies. Everyone clear so far? I'm sorry, guys. I'm fighting a summer cold, and I know I have the mowers and I'm mowing my lawn. So any audio disturbance at my end, I really apologize for it. So the first methodology that we will learn about is the waterfall methodology. Waterfall methodology is one of the oldest methodologies. It was proposed in the 1970s, right around the time that they proposed the SDLC concept. Okay, it was proposed by Win Roy, who worked at Lockheed. Of course, nowadays it's called Lockheed Martin, right? But at that time it was Lockheed. Now, Win Royce actually didn't propose it as waterfall methodology. What he did was he likened it to a waterfall. And it took on the name waterfall methodology, all right? So he just said he had a method which was similar to waterfall. Now, what does that mean? It means that, have you seen a waterfall, guys? Right? And we're not talking about a small rapid, we're talking about a big waterfall. So the water in that waterfall goes from one level, the highest level, to a lower level, to a lower level. It can only move forward. Yes or no? Can it ever revert back? No. Right? So waterfall methodology, what it proposes is a sequential and linear approach. What that means is that there are certain phases in this methodology. And linear means that you can only go in one direction, from one phase to the next to the next. You can never revert back. You only go in one direction. Is that clear to everyone? All right, so buzzwords here, linear and sequential. Okay? This is how the methodology looks like. This method has 4 phases. It has the planning phase, which is also sometimes referred to as the initiation phase. The analysis phase, also referred to as requirements gathering phase. The design phase, where we are doing design and development combined together. And then we have the implementation phase, which is your testing and validation and operations and maintenance combined together. Everyone clear so far? Now these are the 4 phases, and this is always the sequence. It goes from initiation to requirements to design to implementation. All right? So if it is linear and sequential, the sequence will always remain the same. Linear, once you have done your project planning activities, your initiation activities, those outputs are frozen in time. You have planned. Going forward, the minute all your planning activities are complete, you officially get into the next phase, which is analysis phase. You will analyze based upon your planning. What does that mean? So if you had said that you want to spend $300,000 on a project, right, and you have 3 months to build it, then you will gather requirements based on what can be built in 3 months' time and will cost you up to $300,000. Is that clear? What are the key features that you need? Yes or no? So what kind of approach is that? Who remembers the approach? Traditional, very nice. Okay? So this is the traditional approach. So same goes. Once you have gathered all your requirements and you have a proper sign-off, when we say gathered requirements, what are the different things, like tasks and activities that we're talking about? Who remembers those? Guys, what are the, when we say, okay, Ryan, you are on the right track. Document analysis. What next? No, interviews, observations, all of that is for what? Requirements gathering. Those are techniques for requirements gathering. What are the tasks that are, when I say analysis, what are the other things that you must do? Okay, Shadab, how do you communicate requirements?
Once the requirements are documented, we need to communicate the requirements with a team who are involved on the project. The business analysts they act as a link between the business users and the technical team. So in this phase, the technical team would be the stakeholders within the business analysts need to communicate the requirements with. You need to work with also with the project manager, communicate with the project manager to ensure that the project plans.
No. So when I say, if you go back to our previous slide, what did we say? Requirements gathering phase involves different tasks, right? Let's not talk about the technique. You just can't gather requirements without documenting them, right? Before you document it, you must analyze. So you gather requirements, you analyze, you document, validate. Yes or maybe? Do you all remember this? Is there any reason why, if you gather requirements and it's all in your head, or if it's in your, a notepad somewhere, does that have any value? No. So when we say analyze, what are the other things? We must gather first, then we must analyze, right? Once we've analyzed, then we must document. Why? Documentation is a part of communication. Written communication, yes or no? So Shadab, you were correct in the sense that you said communicate requirement, but how? Right? And then you must also validate, verify.
The presentation skills, writing, and conducting comprehensive requirement reviews.
Exactly. Guys, this is what I said last time. You must know what are the different tasks and activities, not the techniques, which you should also know, but you should know the tasks and activities that are done per phase of the SDLC. So before I go even any further on the waterfall, I guess I need to ask a couple more questions. Lipsy. Lipsy, are you there? Okay, you should be able to, all of you should be able to unmute yourself. I can unmute you right now.
I have a lot of background noise. Can you hear it? I'm really sorry.
I'm going to mute you there, because otherwise no one else is going to be able to hear you properly. Nehal, are you there? No problem. Hey, Nehal, what are the different activities that you do in the planning phase or the initiation phase?
In the initiation phase, we first define the problem. So for that, we need to talk to the stakeholders and ask the right questions so the stakeholders can explain to us the scope or the concept of the project. And once we know the concept, we then have to conduct a feasibility test. We have to lay out different options which could drive us to the solutions, and then we have to do the feasibility test based on the cost-benefit analysis and the time frame that we have, and based on that, we rank which options are best, and accordingly, we recommend the best option. And after that, we work out a project schedule. For that, we lay down the different tasks that the team has to do so that we develop the project. And then we have to assign the different tasks to the development team. That is called staffing the project. And in that, we have to go and meet the managers of different departments and explain to them who all will we need in our as a team in the project, and the managers will then accordingly assign the right members to us. Once we do the staffing, we then finally are ready for the project to launch. So we have a proper plan here for the project. We have named a business case, and we then document it and show the document to the stakeholders for their approval. Once the stakeholders have approved of our plan, we finally launch the project, and that is how we go about with the initiation phase.
Very nice. Everyone clear? Okay, Nehal, you can mute yourself. Shadab, question for you. Per the waterfall model, and I just told you what are the two phases that are considered, right? Combined in, or which two phases of the SDLC are combined together in the design phase. So what are the different tasks and activities that must be completed in the design phase of waterfall model?
The design phase for the waterfall model would be planning and analysis, designing, development, implementation, test, and operate. There is a linear approach and there is a linear approach which defines. Is that correct? Please tell me what I'm saying. Is it right?
Are you asking me the question, Shadab?
No. I was asking that what I was saying is it correct? Out of that.
Shadab, you don't know what are the activities that are done in the design phase. Do you remember them?
No, not exactly.
All right, please mute yourself, Shadab. Guys, this is the last time I'll tell you, and this is not just because of Shadab, but everybody else also, okay? Our sessions really should be...
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, I know, but just... That's fine. Mute yourself. I need to talk to everybody. Guys, our sessions really should be 4 hours long, right? But we've been going a little leniently for the past 2 weeks. Simply because, I mean, we've been doing, 2 hours? Last week we went up to 3, right? However, going forward, and today I don't know if we will do more than 2 or not. But going forward, which could be tomorrow, we will have 4-hour sessions. And when we do have 4-hour sessions, understand, you are learning twice as much as anybody else that comes in for a regular class. So weekday sessions, they're only 2 hours per session, right? 7:30 to 9:30. What they learn in 2 hours and what they learn in one session, what you learn in one session is different. Your classes will be done. This is week 3, if I'm not mistaken, right? Which means that you have another 3.5 weeks. So please start catching up. Okay? Next time you give me an answer, I want it to be a proper answer. Why? For a couple of reasons. I totally understand that you're not doing mock interviews with me, right? However, the content of your answer should be correct. So if you don't give me a correct answer, I don't know if you've even understood that subject or not. So when you have mock interviews with Alok, I don't want him to come back and say, Pooja, this batch is not prepared. They don't know any of the techniques. They don't know how to answer a question. They don't know anything. Okay? So I'm giving you tons of assignments. I am asking, I've already given you a day off. Last Sunday we did not have any class, right? But that's the most I can do. I can't give you I can't cancel classes indefinitely. All right? So please, you must understand the SDLC concept. You must understand who is doing what in the organization. What are the different things that are being done? Even if you are not involved, you must understand the entire system. Okay? Everyone clear? Okay. So, Shadab, did you want to give me a proper, correct answer for the design phase?
The design phase in SDLC is the third phase. The primary objective of the design phase is to recommend the alternative solution for system specifications. It has a high level, it consists of a high level designing and developing architecture and structure for software programs, databases, and user interfaces, and the operating environment. It has 7 major activities are done on the design phases, which is design and integrate the network, design and application architecture, design the user interface, design the system interface, design and integrate the databases, prototype for design details, design and integrate the system controls.
Okay. Shadab, first, you're reading off my slide. Okay? I can probably, and you can tell me I'm wrong. Are you reading off my slide?
No. That is
you remember it all? Okay.
No,
so
I have printed out your slide and I've made it as a note, so I'm going through all slides.
Okay. If you have figured it out and you remember all the 6, 7 bullets on it, then this is what I want you to do, Shadab. I want you to give me examples. Okay? I want you to be able to use or frame those bullets in your own words. Don't give me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that looks fine when you are writing down an answer, okay, and you're doing formatting. But if you were to speak out loud, do you typically do bullet 1, bullet 2, bullet 3?
No.
No, right? So you must be able to, 1, give me the same with examples. 2, you should be able to give me the answer in your own words. 3, I've already said that in the waterfall approach, we have design and development combined together. So all I heard was just the activities that are done in the SDLC design phase. What are the activities that are done in the development phase? Because those activities are also done here in this phase, right? In the waterfall approach. And lastly, I want to hear who is doing those activities. Is it the business analyst doing all those activities? Shadab?
No, it is the business analyst and the and business analyst is getting technical support from the technical
No,
department.
shut up. A business analyst is not doing anything in the design and development phase. We support that phase. So if the design team or the development team, if they have questions, they can come and ask us. We will provide clarifications. However, we are not doing any of the tasks that you just listed for design, and none of the tasks that are listed that are done by the developers. Okay? All right. So let's go back to our waterfall model. Guys, all of you, a lot of work to be done. Okay, please take this seriously. So we have 4 phases in waterfall. We have the planning phase or the initiation phase, the analysis phase, which is also called elicitation or requirements gathering phase. We have the design phase, which is a combination of DSDLC concept, the design and development activities all combined together, and this phase is still called design. And the last phase is called implementation, where we've combined the validation and the operations and maintenance pieces together. Everyone clear so far? So you will do all of your initiation activities, planning activities, all right? And once you have put together your initiation document, your project charter, and it gets approved, then that plan is set in time. It is frozen. You cannot go back and change your timeline, your scope, or your budget. Because the assumption is that you have done proper planning. You know exactly how much it's going to cost you. Remember, you were supposed to go through the RFP, RFQ process. Did we talk about that in the last class? So you have actual numbers to back you up, correct? You also know what are the problems, what are the project objectives, and how to solve for that problem. And based on that, you have options. You figured out which is the correct option, right? Best option to meet these objectives. So your planning is supposed to be correct. Once you've planned it, then you will analyze. So analyze really means you will gather the requirements, you will analyze them, you will document them, you will validate them. Okay? Once you have a proper sign-off, then those requirements are frozen in time. You cannot go back and change, edit, add, or delete any of the requirements. Are you clear? Who can tell me why? Who can tell me why we do not change, add, edit, delete any of the requirements? Take a guess. I got 2 answers. Both are correct. But the most important reason is, assumption is, you knew your business needs. You knew what the problem was. And this is the set of requirements that you have documented are the ones that help you meet that objective. If now you add or edit or delete one of those requirements, will you still be able to meet your objective? No. Right? So we don't, or we're not supposed to, in the traditional waterfall model, We are not supposed to be adding, editing, changing any requirements. Okay? Yes, Nehal is also correct. When you add, edit, change, then you're adding more time. Yes or no? You'll have to go back and revisit the same documents. You'll have to go back and ask the same questions all over again. If you do some rework, can you still stick to your original timeline? No. Okay? So once you have your documents that have been signed off, those specifications are frozen in time. Like the water in the waterfall, it goes from one level to the next level and it can never go back. So the only way possible is to go to the next phase, which is the design phase. Are you clear? Now once the design and development is complete, when we say complete, what do we mean? The developers have done their unit testing. Yes or no? And if they feel that the system has passed unit testing, then the only way for it to go is to the next phase, which is your implementation phase, where the software is going to be tested for stability and maturity, and then it is going to be deployed. Are you all clear? Now look at this model itself. Can you tell me who is the key player in each phase? Key player in the planning phase. The stakeholder. Very nice, Lipsy. Why? Because it is the stakeholder, the business, who's telling you what the problem is, what kind of solution they need, what are their business objectives, right? Without that information, is there anything we as business analysts can do? No. Even as far as planning is concerned, they give us a high level of when do they want this application ready by. What is the maximum that they are willing to spend on it, right? So they are the ones that's driving the planning activities. In the analysis phase, who is the key player here? BA. Alright? Now remember, BA will be supporting every phase. Alright? So yes, we will all also be present in the planning phase. We will also be present in the design phase. However, we are not the key player in the design phase. Who is the key player in the design phase? Nehal, you're assuming when we say design in waterfall, is it really just design or is it design plus development? Remember guys, when we talk about waterfall, this is a trick question. You keep talking about just architects at an interview when we're talking about the design phase, and you will lose your brownie points. It's an incorrect answer. Why? Because in waterfall, design and development is combined together, so you just can't say architects. It is the development team, which includes the architects, the developers, the production support, deployment team, everybody. Okay? Next, who is the key player in the implementation phase? Who decides if this product solution is ready for deployment? It is the QA team, testing team. Very nice. Now if you notice, we also do testing. Okay, we do UAT. So we're involved in the implementation phase. We are involved in the design phase. We are definitely involved. We are involved in the analysis phase, and we are definitely involved in the planning phase, right? So a business analyst's job really begins from the very beginning of the project, and it ends with the completion of the project. So we're everywhere. However, we are not the key players in 3 out of 4 phases of the waterfall project. Is everyone clear on that? Nice. Now look at the waterfall model. Would you say that this is a simplified version of the proposed SDLC? Would you agree on with me on that? Yes. Okay. Also, look at it. Is this the flow that typically comes to our mind when we do personal projects? Yes. So what that tells us is waterfall is easy to understand, easy to implement. Yes or no? It is a very simplified version of the SDLC. It's a very simple SDLC methodology, correct? Now let's step back. Who remembers the project success criteria? What are the project success criteria? No, project success criteria, not requirements, Neha. The project, nope, it's not the must have, should have, could have, nope. When do we say that a project has been successful? What is it that the project manager is managing? A project, right? And what is his responsibility? The project must be completed on time. It must be completed within budget. It must meet the customer's needs. It must meet the objectives. Yes, no, maybe. I did teach you this, right? I think it was session 2. So, look at your waterfall model. If you have done your project planning properly, then you have a proper timeline and a budget, and even your project objectives properly defined, yes or no? Once that planning has been done, it is frozen in time, right? Can you go back and change any of these 3 criteria? The timeline, budget, or scope? No. If you can't change timeline or budget or even add requirements, change requirements, any of it, what are the chances that you will miss your timeline or budget? Very nice. The risk of you missing any of your deadlines, right? Whether it is budget or timeline or not meeting your project objectives, right? The chances of those are really low. Yes? So with waterfall project, your technology risk or technical risk, as we call it, is really low. You're not taking a big risk of not being able to deliver what you actually sought out to deliver, right? Yes or no? So waterfall is low technical risk. If you follow the waterfall approach properly, will you meet your project success criteria? So the chances of you or the project being successful is 100%. Yes or no? Or very high if you follow the waterfall approach properly. Correct? Guys, I'm not just teaching two people here. Where are the others? Are the others following me? Okay. So the advantages of waterfall are: 1, low technical risk, easy to understand, easy to implement, and chances of success are almost guaranteed if you follow the waterfall methodology properly. Correct? And this is one of the reasons why 80% of the world, right, or 80% of the projects that are happening over the world, companies are using waterfall approach. Does that make sense? Now, why do you think they are using it? Of course, aside from the fact that we have these great advantages, why are they still following waterfall? Why? Because most of these companies, remember, the majority, have you seen a pyramid? Do you know what a pyramid looks like? So the base, right, is the widest of all, correct? Do you think the base is made up of large projects, medium, or small? Now, small companies, do you think they have the kind of resources, money, and time, right, to be able to take high technical risk? No. Correct? So they don't have that kind of, they don't have that flexibility. Do you think they have the resources to implement a complicated methodology? No. And do you think they would, especially for small companies, right? Or even for big companies, sometimes doing small projects, do you think it's worth the risk of not being able to deliver a successful project? No. Okay. So definitely all of the small companies follow waterfall methodology. Okay. Next, the medium-sized companies, right? Medium-sized companies, part of the same logic that applies to small still applies, right? Not all projects and not all companies have that kind of budget and timeline or resources, correct? To be able to use some of the more complicated or more evolved methodologies. They still want to keep their technical risk low. Are you clear? Now, that does not mean that if you are a big company that you don't need to use waterfall. You know why? Because there are some huge companies, one of them being NASA, who still uses waterfall. So we're talking about the latest, and I think I shared that with you, right? The latest, what was it? The Curiosity that landed on Mars. Do you know how much it cost to build that one, Curiosity? $2 billion. Did anyone read up? Does anyone know of Curiosity that landed on Mars about a month ago? That's right, they did change the software, but they built it prior to it, right? Prior to deploying it. Now they're in the deployment mode, right? Production support mode. But the development phase, when they were in development phase, they still follow waterfall methodology. Why? Do you think the requirements changed? Let's say they began this project 5 years ago, right? Something like Curiosity, do you think they can build it in 3 months? Or 6 months even? No. Right? So let's just assume that they began this project 5 years ago. Do you think the requirements changed over the years? No, Nidhi. The requirements did not change, right? The objectives did not change. The functionality that the software must have did not change, did it? The plan, the timeline, the budget, even that did not change, correct? Now, why does NASA still use waterfall? Because it is very easy to go over budget and over time, especially on big projects. We always say, right? Oh, in 10 years, we don't know what the value is going to be, how much we will be able to get done, what the new technology will be. So what we do is we tend to either underestimate or overestimate. Yes or no? But do you think the government can take up can start a project and just issue a blank check to NASA saying, oh, it's okay, if it takes you 5 years and $10 billion, that's okay. Just use whatever. Do you think they can do that? Shadab, it was never the case, all right? Even when the first man landed on moon, even then, it's not whatever and however much. Okay, that's hardly ever the case. There always has to be a fixed budget somewhere. Okay, trust me, there's many projects that are just scrapped because if they feel that that this is not going to work out. All right. So that being said, there are certain projects where you don't want to go overboard. You don't want to go, unlimited resources. You should be able to, especially remember, this is a business, right? This is a corporation. So you just can't sink money into a dry pool, right? You must always have a return on investment. Is it even worth it? Feasibility. So we do have waterfall methodology being applied to some very large projects. Okay, why? Because again, same story. You want to be able to keep the technical risk really low. The government has given us a certain funding, $2 billion or $3 billion to be spent in 5 years. Isn't that how the government allocates budget? So there is a fixed amount in that bucket, correct? You can't overspend. And that is the reason why there are certain projects, large projects, that use waterfall methodology. All right? So 80% of the world still uses waterfall methodology because of these factors. Everyone clear so far? However, the success rate of waterfall is only 10%. So 10% why? remember we have, with the pyramid, base of the pyramid, we have so many different small companies, right? And all of them, or most of them, using waterfall methodology. What was the caveat that I added? That the chances of your project to be successful are 100% only if, what did I say? Only if you follow the methodology properly, correct? That's right, maybe I just told you why 80% of the companies use it. Okay? And I'm telling you that the success rate is only 10%. And I'm telling you why. Remember, guys, the success rate does not depend on the methodology. Let me ask you this. If in a certain class, right, let's say advanced math or whatever, whichever subject you want to choose, if the pass-fail ratio is 10%, does it mean that the subject is wrong, or do you think that the students are not trying hard enough, are not doing things correctly? Which one is it? Exactly. So waterfall is a great methodology if it is followed properly, right? So when I say the success in waterfall is only 10%, always remember it is not the methodology's fault. Why? First and foremost, the methodology assumes, right, that everybody who is in the IT industry building a software, that people are intelligent and smart. They know what they are doing. Yes or no? That applies to the business stakeholders and the IT stakeholders alike. So when the planning activities are done, the business should know exactly what are the problem areas or what are their project goals and objectives. And they should be able to, in the requirements phase, tell you exactly what are their requirements, what are the features they want to have in the software that will help them meet the objective. Another extension of the same assumption is that the business analyst knows what they are doing. So the business analyst asks the right questions, right? Keeps on digging until he gets the right answers. Will analyze all the requirements properly, understand which ones are the must-have, should have, could have, won't have, right? That the requirements are documented properly. Now, if the planning and the analysis is done correctly, do you think we would ever have to make any changes to our project? No. However, real life, right? Do you think every person is created alike? No. Is it possible that every stakeholder in every company, whether it is an IT stakeholder or a business stakeholder, knows exactly what they want and how to solve the problem, how to analyze properly? No. So is that a problem with the methodology, or is it a problem with the people and their skills? It is a problem with people and skills, right? So the first, one of the reasons why waterfall projects fail is because of the assumption that people are skilled. They know what they are doing, and they know how, what they want. That they will never change their mind. There is no reason for them to change their mind, especially if they know what they want. Correct? Are you clear so far? Now, what is the other reason? The other reason is, look at your waterfall model. How many times is the business sponsors or business stakeholders playing a major role in the project that they are sponsoring? One. And when does it happen? Throughout the project or at the very beginning, initial stage? Are they then ever totally involved with the project? Are they ever? No. What that does is, again, it's human nature, right? We start feeling dejected. We don't know, we start getting suspicious, right? What do we say? Oh, we already told them, but God knows what they'll deliver, right? Yes or no? Is that a common refrain that we've all heard? So what happens is that sometimes customers, right, simply because they are not part of the entire process, they feel dissatisfied. And when they are dissatisfied, even if you were to give them a solution exactly the way they wanted it, does it still make them happy? Does it take away from the joy? Right? So they are not happy. Yes or no? Yes, they are still a little dissatisfied. They are a little nervous. They are a little hesitant. Sometimes they are a little suspicious. Right? They don't trust. They don't trust the system. Yes? Exactly. So, if that is the case, can you really say that the project was successful? Because part of the project was to help the business meet their objectives, right? Now the business is, is not happy with the solution. It is meeting their needs, but they're not happy with the solution. So you failed in a certain way, correct? And that is when we started differentiating that initially waterfall, the assumption was that when you build something that meets the customer's objectives, that the customer will always be happy. But afterwards, we realized that you can build it exactly how they wanted it. However, just because it meets their needs does not mean that they are still happy. A common example is, if I were to take you out for lunch or dinner, right? And I knew what your favorite dish is, and without asking you, if I were to simply go ahead and order for you, right? Maybe this is exactly what you would have ordered had I given you the chance to order for yourself, right? However, because I took that choice away, are you 100% satisfied with the meal anymore? Do you think you would enjoy that lunch just as much as had you ordered the same thing by yourself? No, right? So this is, guys, trust me, this is a study, a research that has been done, that people's satisfactions go down when the choice is taken away from them. You give them the choice and they would still have picked the very same thing that you picked it for them, but the fact that they had a choice gives them contentment, okay? And that is something that we assumed with waterfall, that so long as you give them what they want, that they will be happy. And that may not be always true, okay? Are you clear? So there is not much customer satisfaction, or with the waterfall, the customer satisfaction rate is really low, and hence your project fails because the adoption rate is sometimes really low, right? I may have built the software to you, I give it to you, but because you are not satisfied, because you are apprehensive, you don't use the software as you should, right? Is it truly really meeting the goals and objectives in that case? If you're not using it the way it was supposed to be intended to be used, then do you get the value for the money that you spent on this project? No. Okay, so that was the second reason. Third, let's just again look at the traditional approach, right? Can you imagine? We thought that it will take us 3 months and $300,000, right? We always knew these are the goals and objectives, and we thought this was our requirement, right? Or this is what we need. And based on that initial, discovery phase, we figured out that we will only spend $300,000 on this project, right? Now you're trying to build it. Or you are in the analysis phase. You are only, you are limited by the $300,000 in the 3 months. Remember, that's what traditional approach is, right? You only gather the requirements that you can build in the parameters that you have agreed upon previously in the previous phase. Yes or no? Can you have 10 requirements that will cost you a total of $500,000, even though your budget only says you only have $300,000? No. If that is the case, if you're limited by time and money because of how your planning phase, right, how you've planned, is the quality of the product always guaranteed? Do you think you can guarantee the quality of the product? No, right? Because you're compromising, right? You're compromising on some of the requirements based on the time and money. And this is not an issue with big companies. It is an issue with smaller companies. Why? Because their resources are not the cream of the cream, right? NASA can afford to hire the top graduates from the top Ivy League colleges. But do you think the small companies in the smaller countries, do you think they have that kind of capacity? They can hire the cream of the cream from all over the world? No. Okay? And because of the same, sometimes what you gather is not, sometimes you may just have gathered wrong requirements. Again, because of people. But your only option with waterfall is, like it said, right? Linear. You can only go forward. So your options are, you still must deliver. Once you've taken on a project, you must deliver even knowing that this does not meet the objective. This is not the right set of requirements. This software will not help the business meet their objective. But your only option is to continue forward. Yes or no? So what have you done? You wasted time, money, and effort. Correct? Because like a waterfall, you must always flow forward. If you don't do that, then the other option is scrap the project and start afresh. Which is an even worse option. Why? Because let's say you were in the analysis phase or the design phase and you realize that this is not what you want to build, that this is not going to help meet the objective. You scrap the project, you have used up 50% of the money, and do you have something to account for it? Anything tangible? Do you even have a product? to account for the money that you spent. No. That is why in waterfall approach, those companies that follow the traditional waterfall, they continue forward, okay? Because they take the chances they are taking is really, and an option between the two. If I scrap the project, I will have lost of the, $200,000 of the total $300,000, and I have zero software to account for it. On the other hand, if I continue forward, right, I will have a software. I will still have met my timeline and budget. Yes, the software will only meet 50% of the objectives, but is 50% of the objectives better than 0% of the objectives? Yes. However, if you only deliver 50% of the objectives, is it still considered a successful project? No. Alright? So companies must take a lot of things into consideration, right, before they choose a methodology, right? A lot of it is based on their financial security. So if the company has lots of, if they are cash rich and they can hire best resources, absolutely. They may choose to use a different methodology, right? And remember, again, if NASA can have successful projects, so can a different company, right? It's not the methodology that makes the project successful or a failure. It's the people. It's how you implement the methodology that will make the project successful or make it fail. Are you clear so far? So if you go back to the previous slide, and if you read through in the notes section that only 1 in 10 projects are successful, another thing to consider is, yes, we have 9 unsuccessful projects, but those 9 unsuccessful projects probably belong to companies that are really, really small, right? We're talking about 9 unsuccessful projects. So even if we were talking about, let's say, medium-sized projects, right? 9 medium-sized projects, which is 6 to 9 months, versus 1 large project, which takes, like for example, Curiosity, that probably took them 5 years to build. $2 billion versus $200,000. Which one do you think is more, if you look at the numbers, which one is a more, which methodology is more enchanting, or enchanting? Which one would you rather go? You look at the sparkle first, right? You always look at, oh wow, if this methodology works for NASA, if it works for a $2 billion project, then sure, ours is peanuts compared to it. Yes or no? All right? So waterfall methodology, the traditional waterfall methodology, has great benefits. But with benefits, there are also some drawbacks. So you have to take it with a pinch of salt. You must know the pros and cons of this methodology. All right? Yes, even knowing the cons, knowing that the success rate is only 10%, remember, the companies understand that the success rate can be increased, can be improved upon if they follow the methodology properly. So it is up to them, all right, whether they can be successful with waterfall or not. And that is also one of the reasons why people and companies still prefer waterfall to any of the other models. Is that clear to everyone? Now guys, I know I've been talking for a good hour and a half on waterfall. You must be able to compile it, consolidate all of this information, and talk for 3.5 minutes if the question on waterfall is asked. Waterfall methodology, waterfall, Agile Scrum, and RUP methodology. of these three, at least you will be asked interview, when you go for an interview, you will be asked on at least 2 out of these 3 for sure. Okay? Waterfall, I'd like to say, almost like a guarantee that you would be asked about waterfall for sure. So please pay attention. Is everyone clear so far? Any questions on waterfall methodology? All right. So waterfall model, the one that we have learned so far, is the traditional waterfall model. Okay? Now this model, if you were to do a Google search, then you will see some information on Wikipedia. And I think I've mentioned this before. What you will find on Google now, if you do a search, right, or any search, you may or may not find the traditional waterfall model listed anywhere. Why? Because the traditional waterfall model is not being used anymore. We still use waterfall. It's just that we have made so many tweaks to it that we are using a variation of the traditional waterfall. Okay? What we have is a hybrid waterfall model with different phases and different activities. These hybrid waterfall models will change from company to company. So when you are asked in an interview, you always assume they're talking about the traditional waterfall. When you provide the answer, you must say the traditional waterfall methodology, all right? Make the distinction, because what you find on the on the World Wide Net right now is not traditional waterfall model. The only way for you to learn up on more traditional, on the traditional waterfall methodology is by ordering books through some of the, at half price books or Barnes and Nobles or Amazon. You can go and order some books and learn more on the waterfall methodology. Okay? But what I have taught you is the old traditional method. Another thing to remember, and I want all of you to pay attention here. Wikipedia is not a good source of information. Who can tell me why? That's right. Anyone can add or edit information. And time has proved this fact that their reviewers, even though the information that you edit, right, or you post, it goes through a review process. It has been proven over time that the review process is not really accurate. Okay? So it does not work. I really suggest that if you do a Google search, go to ask.com or any other site excepting for Wikipedia. It is not the most reliable source. In fact, at my daughter's school, they don't consider Wikipedia as a, they don't want any information retrieved from that site at all for any assignment. So that's how it is at schools also. They do not rely on Wikipedia. And I would suggest that you do the same. Wikipedia is not a reliable source of information. Everyone clear? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the hybrid models. What is different in these hybrid models? First and foremost, we talk about customer satisfaction, right? So in some hybrid models, we have incorporated customer feedback, right? And because of that feedback, we have incorporated or allowed to make changes to your planning phase and your analysis phase. So in this hybrid model, it is your planning specifications or your analysis specifications or your design. None of them are really truly frozen. You can go through an exception process called the change control process, and you can incorporate a change. All right, you can make a change, an amendment to your original project plan, to your original requirements, to your original design. Are you clear so far? When you make that change, when you request that change, right, and you must analyze what is the change, why are you asking, all that information. But once that change is approved, then your entire project, you know how your clock is reset. It's kind of when you sign up for a 2-year contract and in the middle of your 2nd year you renew your contract. The time is reset, isn't it? Do you only have the contract for the remaining 6 months or 8 months, or do you have it for an additional 2 years? Alright, same here. So if your change, right, irrespective of which time, when are you requesting this change, or when you request that change, you must tell, based on this change, is your project timeline, your scope, or your budget impacted? If yes, then what is the impact? 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you will add that time or that amount to your budget or whatever, and say, all right, so my new project delivery date is going to be such and such. So going forward, you will not be evaluated against the old timeline, but you will be evaluated against the new one. There is a reset. All right, so that is one variation. Now again, there is a cost, right? So sure, you were able to incorporate the change based on customer feedback, but you are using up more time and money. Correct? So always there is a trade-off. Are you clear? All right. Another variation that you may find in companies, I mean, you may have one variation or the other, or a combination of both and more, right? It could be anything. Another variation, common variation, is that even though waterfall approach is a traditional approach, you will find elements of object-oriented approach within waterfall. Common examples are use cases and UML diagrams in your requirements document. Why? Because it has been proven that when you just state that I need this functionality and leave it up to the developers to visualize, figure it out how this functionality works, then he may not have the same vision as Steve Jobs. So you think all the developers at Apple have the same vision as Steve Jobs? No, right? If they did, they'd all be Steve Jobs, correct? So if Steve Jobs, while he was alive, if he wanted to have something built, he needed to explain it, right? Because the developer does not know what you are anticipating. So there are many waterfall models, right, variations nowadays, where we are providing that level of detail. We're doing object-oriented analysis, even though we're following waterfall approach, and putting together our use cases and UML diagrams. Is that clear? Okay, so those are the two common variations that you will find. Neha, we'll talk about UML. UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. That is a separate 2-hour discussion we will have. Just remember that you will find elements of object-oriented approach in the traditional approach, in the hybrid model. We still call them waterfall. All right? Now again, another variation, and it has nothing, is some companies, they will have a very small design phase, and then development, testing, and operations and maintenance is all combined into the implementation phase. Yet other companies will have design, development, and testing in the design phase, and just deployment and operations and maintenance in the implementation phase. Okay, so these are small stuff. This is small variations. These don't account for much. The biggest two I've already talked about, the change and the object-oriented approach. Is everyone clear? Okay. So guys, I'm going to take a quick 5 minutes and I'll be back, all right? All right, guys, I'm back. Everyone there? Okay. Could you mute your... Right. No, it was not muted. I just muted you. You should be able to mute it at your end. Okay, right? The minute you join, mute yourself. Find your name in the participants box and do a right click. You should be able to mute yourself. All right. So the next methodology that we will talk about is called spiral methodology. Spiral methodology is an extension of waterfall. This was the proposed solution to all of the drawbacks that we had with waterfall approach. Okay? Now, what were the drawbacks? Who remembers the drawbacks? Customer dissatisfaction, right? Apprehension, suspicion. What else? The assumption that there will be no change. Everyone knows what they're doing, and hence we will never need to make any changes. Correct? That's right. And the last one is that imagine you have a big project and the entire project, right? And you are halfway done and you know this is not going to meet your objectives and you've lost, right? You still have to go complete the project, right? So the approach that was suggested, right, was instead of doing one big project, right, or doing the project in one big bang, what if we were to break it down and do it as sub-projects? Do you think that would help? So even if you knew that your project was wrong, you haven't used up 1/3 or 2/3 of your budget. But because you broke it down into 3 sub-projects, I'm just saying, I mean, it could be 2 sub-projects or 6. Because you broke it down into 2 sub-projects, you know, and you are in the analysis phase of release 1, you only probably used 10% of your overall budget. So do you think you brought down your risk any further? Yes or no? Everyone understand how I said that the risk went down? Because let's say if instead of doing one big project, right, using up $100, now I've said I'm going to do 2 sub-projects. I've split the money up 50-50. Now the $50 that I have for sub-project 1, right, is split over the 4 phases. And my phase 2, I'm in phase 2, or even if I'm in phase 3 of the first project, I've only used up a part of that $50. Yes or no? Correct? So if you look at the overall picture, had I really been in the design development phase of the waterfall project, I probably would have used up $70 or $80, right, out of 100. But because I've broken it down into 2 sub-projects, what I've done is I've only wasted 30 out of, or 25 out of the entire $100. So my risk has gone down. Correct? Customer satisfaction. If I do this project, right, instead of doing one big project, if I break it down into two, the customer is involved twice as much. Yes or no? If he's involved twice as much, does the satisfaction level go up? Yes. If the customer is involved twice as much, let's say I've completed release 1, subproject 1. The customer takes a look. He may come back and say, oh, you know what, I wish this changed. Or, you know what, I forgot a requirement. You can do release 2. You still have that scheduled. Do you think you can add his request to your release 2? Yes. Right? So you can incorporate change even without going through a change request process, right? Change management process. Yes or no? Now, another thing to remember in Firelink, that every sub-project that we do is called a release. And every release should be a fully functional prototype. Because if the user can't or the customer can't use it, then they can't give you feedback on it. Correct? Can you provide feedback on something that you're not able to see, touch, feel, use? No. So every release is a fully functional prototype. So Spiral methodology is an extension of waterfall. Here, instead of doing one big waterfall project, you are doing a series of mini waterfall projects. When I say series of mini waterfall projects, it means that if you have decided that you will have 2 releases, then it means that you have 2 waterfall projects. And each waterfall project will have how many phases? 4. So release 1 will have 4 phases, right? Once you've gone through 4 phases, then you will get your customer feedback. Your goals and objectives for release 2 must include the customer feedback provided from release 1. That will define your new scope. Based on that new scope, you will estimate your time and budget, and will go on to do a second set of waterfall. Is it clear? So one of the things that Spiral assumes here is no one gets it right the first time. The objective is build a little, test a little, build a little, test a little. Baby steps. When you do that, your customer feedback, customer satisfaction goes up. Customers are involved, right? More involved in your project. The cost is also lower as compared to, remember in waterfall, if you went through 2/3 of the project or 3/4 of the project and then realize it's not going to meet your objectives, or it will only meet 50% of your objectives, you've used up the money and you have not even met your project goals, right? On the other hand, here, sure, you've taken a little more time to develop it, because remember, the minute you must redevelop something, fix issues from release 1, that will take you more time. Yes or no? However, the total cost of the project, right, if you look at the opportunity loss and all, then the total cost of the project is lower. Correct? Guys, how about the others? I'm teaching to all of you. Does this make sense to you? Another thing, if I'm building a fully functional prototype, does it allow the customer or gives the customer the ability to start getting some return on investment early on? Does it give them the opportunity to get some return on investment? Yes. A very common example is your Apple iPhone. Can you imagine if Apple, if they waited until they had fully developed the technology, and if they only waited until they had the 5S complete, do you think they would have been able to capitalize on the market for 3 years past? How long has it been? I think 4 years, right, since the 3G was launched. Do you think they could have made all the profits that they have in the past 4 or 5 years? The 5S has not been launched yet, correct? So instead of having one big waterfall project, they have multiple releases. Each release is its own fully functional prototype. Your 3G phone works, doesn't it? You can still go and buy a 3G, correct? iPhone 3G. You can also buy the 3GS, a 4S, correct? Every release, what did they do? 3GS has new features, plus some of the features that were broken or not working as desired in 3G, correct? So changes to 3G plus new features made up 3GS, yes or no? Nope, that is not. Why? Everything is a prototype. Prototype is different than prototyping. It is a fully functional prototype. Okay, Shadab? Same applies to 4S. They have enhanced some of the features of 3GS and added some new cool features and marketed it as 4S. Right? That is the spiral model. What it does is it continues to keep the benefits of waterfall approach. What are the benefits? The technical risk is low. Yes or no? Do you think the technical risk goes up in spiral? No. Why? Because you're doing a series of mini waterfalls. Okay? If you are, so long as you're following waterfall, your technical risk is low, isn't it? So you still have the benefits of waterfall. It is easy to understand. It's just a totally new methodology. No, you need to know waterfall methodology, right? Because those are the phases that apply. You've only added a layer of complexity. Instead of doing one project, you're doing a series of waterfalls. Correct? Yes, no, maybe, guys. So if you must do a project in spiral using spiral methodology, which methodology do you really need to know? Is there anything special in waterfall, in spiral? No. What are the phases of spiral? The phases of spiral are the same phases as waterfall. Okay? All right. So what are the disadvantages? I just told you the advantages. What are the disadvantages? Who can tell me what are the disadvantages? Yes, time consuming. Very nice, Lipsy. It limits reusability. That's perfect. That's also correct. Because if you are, if you're building on top of something, right, then you can't go out with, you don't really have a totally new product. Yes or no? And sometimes there is a limit to how much you can build on something, right? Or how much you can reuse the same technology. When we say time consuming, time is equals money, right? It is expensive. That's right. Too much freedom given. If you don't know when to say, all right, this is it, then you can go into one phase after the next, after the next. You may have multiple iterations. But more importantly, let's look at the corporate world, right? There are 4 different business units. Every year, all these different business units will have project goals and objectives, right? Because that they must meet using IT projects. Yes or no? Now we have one pool of resources, development team, BAs, correct? So, and even if we had separate BAs, we still have one development team. So the development team can only work on X number of projects at a given time. So we were doing we are following spiral methodology. I have given you release 1 and release 2, all right? 2 out of 3 releases for this project. Do you think your major features have been met? Major objectives have been met? Because we said that it will be a fully functional prototype. Neha, chances are yes. Let us look at your iPhone. The major features, right, that meet the goals and objectives of the project between the 3G and the 4S, what is a major feature that helps you meet your goals and objectives? What really has Apple iPhone delivered that's on your 4S and is not on your 3G? Can anyone think of anything? Siri. Yes, 4GS has Siri. 4S has Siri. Siri. Wi-Fi, I think 3G also had Wi-Fi capability, right? Main functions are the same. Main functions, because it is a fully functional prototype, the main functions will be the same. It's just the trimming that changes. So in 3G, they had a certain kind of screen. In 4S, they changed the size of the screen. 3G also had a camera. 4S, the capability of that camera is really enhanced, right? How many of you know somebody who uses Siri on a day-to-day basis? Is that a critical functionality? No, right? So it is a trimming, isn't it? It's a nice to have, correct? Would you spend $700 to buy the 4S simply because of Siri? No. Right? So your major features, right, have already been addressed in release 1 or release 2. What will happen is the other projects for the other business units, we haven't even had a chance to give them anything yet, right? So look at what would you do? Would you wait until you gave one person 100%, or would you try to give everything a little bit to keep them going throughout the year? Help them meet some parts, right, of their objectives. How would you do it? You try to keep everybody, right? Give a little bit to everybody? Yes or no? So what happens then is that the project team gets reassigned to a different project. Right? And so the momentum dies down. Yes or no? The urgency to complete this project is gone. It's not just because of IT. Do you think you and I are both, customers, right? Do you think we have the same buzz for the 5S as we had for the 3GS? People get tired, right? Of course, there will always be some people who are technology fanatics, right? But how many of them are able to sustain the same kind? It's not just for the technology. Let's talk about all these sequels, movie sequels. First one is great, second one is also good. But by the third, do you think the same kind of enthusiasm is there? No. Right? So it's not just the development team that they get engaged elsewhere. It's also the business units. I mean, they're meeting 80% of their objectives, right? And sometimes by the time we come back, by giving, doing the other projects and come back to you, you may have learned a way to figure out or to compensate on the remaining 20%, and you may have workarounds to meet the remaining 20% of your goals and objectives. And you're fine, you're comfortable. You don't want to go through another mini waterfall cycle. Okay? So what that does is, sure, the customer is happy. This is a decision that he or she has made, right? However, your project is still incomplete, right? But the good thing about spiral methodology is you get evaluated per release. But as a whole, if you look at the project, did you really deliver the entire project? No. So another thing that spiral methodology takes care of is, it takes away, it shifts the blame from the development team to the business unit. So if we don't finish with iteration 3 or release 3, then it's more because of the business than because of us. As far as we are concerned, we are being evaluated per iteration. Did we deliver what what the project success criteria were for that iteration? All right? Does that make sense? It is called a spiral because we go in loops, right? We finish one, we go into another loop. And every iteration, we plan the iteration, we gather the requirements, analyze, we develop, integrate, and then we get customer feedback to plan some more. So it can go into loop 1, a second loop, or loop 3, right? Until we feel that the customers are happy. Everyone clear so far? So let me ask you this. Is this sufficient information for today? I think it is. All right, so we will end our class now. I know it is a little soon. We've only been at it for 2.5 hours, roundabout. But in tomorrow's class, it's going to be it will be very critical, tomorrow's class. I don't want any of you to miss tomorrow's class. I don't want any of you not to be prepared, okay? So use the hour, the remaining 45 minutes wisely. Please play back the recording. Please print out the slides. Please go over everything that I've taught you, okay? And come prepared for tomorrow's session. Everyone okay? That's fine, Chada. Maybe we do not post out PowerPoint. You do have the PDF version. There is the JPEG version. There is, God knows, there's so many different versions. PPT we did post out a long time ago, but there are many people who did not, who had Macs, and the PPTs are not supported. Right? It's a Microsoft product. So
Right.
That being said, we also ran into issues where the information on a PowerPoint slide is reused by other training companies. Okay?
The only problem is when I print it, the background is really, really dark, and it's really hard to read off of it. That was the only reason I was asking.
You can change that. Even for your PDF version, you should be able to change the contrast and everything.
I've tried every single way, but I couldn't do it. So I thought maybe, if you could get any different version of it, or maybe just with the lighter background, it'll be okay.
Let me see. The lighter background, maybe this is something that we've had in the past also. We've had several kind of requests. We've had students who said they didn't want to print 30 slides or 30 pages. They wanted to have 2 slides per page. There was once when somebody said they wanted to print 4 slides per page. Another one who said they don't want the white background, so we try to accommodate as much, but I know for a fact that you should be able to, if you open up in the tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to bring down the contrast on the slides. And
I'll try that.
Yeah, try it, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions before I end today's session? Nothing? Okay, so guys, I'm going to sign off here, and I will talk to you all tomorrow morning at 9. All right, take care. You're all welcome.